Debbie's Back Porch. We're going to do a quick video on canning white beans. This will not be like my other videos. This is going to be pretty quick. I'm doing it for a couple reasons. One is because Fred came upstairs last night from the basement and he had a big jar of dried cannellini beans, and I know they have to be 8 or 9 months old. Even though they were sealed up, I want to go ahead and cook them because beans get hard as they get older, and I like to have beans on the shelf already canned, ready to go. So we're going to can them up. Another reason is because folks in the Safe Canning by the Book on Debbie's Back Porch group have been asking for more canning videos. And while this is not my usual canning time, it is a time I can meat and dried beans and bone broth. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and video this, and I'm not going to cover every little tiny detail, because if you want more on all the safety tips and finding the sweet spot on your canner and understanding your canner, you can check out the canning red beans video that's up on Debbie's Back Porch YouTube channel, because I'm very detailed in that, or the canning meat for beginners, I'm very detailed in that. This is more just the basic steps that we'll go through. And the other reason is because Michelle Flowers asked me to, and she's such a sweet and productive and wonderful member of the porch. When she asked for a video on canning white beans, I decided I needed to do one. So the steps are: rehydrate your beans. Never can dried beans. I soaked these overnight, and right before I got ready to can, I turned them on, I washed them, covered them in water, turned them on, and let them boil for 30 minutes. Beans must always be fully rehydrated when you can them. It is not safe to can beans that you put in the jar dry and then add water. I'm not really sure how many beans I've got there because I just put all I had in. I have 7 quart jars ready. It may be more, it may be less. We're going to can what we got, and the rest of it we're going to put in a pot and have it for dinner tomorrow. I might also tell you that I kind of have a little bit of a mess because I'm having 2 projects go on at once. So if you see some unusual clutter, just ignore it. So these beans have been rehydrated. Now, it doesn't mean they're done. They've been rehydrated, but they're not cooked mushy. So the beans that you cooked for dinner are not okay to can. These are at a certain point of doneness. These are cannellini beans, and they're not a real common bean. So if you're not familiar with them, they're like a white kidney bean almost. They have a little more flavor, in my opinion, than, say, navy beans or Great Northerns. Now, if you'll see, I am not filling this jar all the way full with beans. Well, we had a camera malfunction, and depending on how good I am at editing, you may or may not know it, but my camera memory got full right in the middle of filling the first jar. So I'm going to start over, and I'm not sure what I've said and what I haven't said because I don't have a script. So I'm going to empty the water out of my jar, and this is a little cramped here. And start filling. And when my camera cut out, I was at about this place and I was explaining why I don't fill the jar totally full of beans. But I do make sure that my headspace is at 1 inch. And that's because these beans will swell some more. And a little bit more water. And actually, these may be kind of old beans, so they'll swell a lot. And I would rather have a lot of juice in the beans than to have a bean brick, because I filled it too full and it came up. And it's possible, if they swell up enough, that they'll prevent sealing. Doesn't happen often, but it can happen. Okay, so you clean the rim. Check the rim for any nicks or cracks. We have here Golden Harvest lids. They have been washed. They are not simmered. You may simmer them if you want to, but Ball, Golden Harvest, Kerr, and I think Bernardin do not require that you simmer them. Actually, you should never boil them. You may simmer them. Put the lid on. I have hot canner, hot beans, hot liquid, hot jar. Put it directly into the canner. One jar at a time. I'll fill one more for you since the camera went out and I missed some. I'm not going to have 7 quarts. So I will put empty jar in to the empty space to keep the jars from rattling around. When I say empty, I mean no beans. I will put water in it. And people ask about that on the group. Why would you can water? Well, you know, I like to keep 1 or 2 quarts of clean water. Doesn't matter how long you do it. Anything over 10 minutes sterilizes it. And I'll keep 1 or 2 jars of water. You know, in an emergency, maybe the water goes off, you want to make coffee. But if I've already got 1 or 2 clean jars of water and I don't need to put any more up, I'll just put empty jars with water and no lids to hold the space, because I don't want the jars clinking together. If I had 6, that would be fine, but if I only have 4 or 5, I put additional jars in. And that is, by the way, one of the only times it's okay, or it's the only time it's okay for you to reuse lids for canning. If you want to risk a quart of water, then feel free to do that. I'm going to have to dig some of these beans out. We'll come back when I get them all full. We ended up with 4 quarts of beans, and I did a 1.5 pint jar, and I've got 2 jars of water in the canner. We're going to put the lid on and get started with the process. Be back. Good plume of steam. I start my timing now 10 minutes before I put the weight on. Okay, timer's going off. Put the weight on. I use a 10-pound weight because I'm under 1,000 feet. We'll come back when we get a rattle. Okay, we're starting to rattle. We're at 11 pounds pressure. As soon as I get a rattle, I will turn the heat down to my sweet spot. This is a 90-minute process on quarts of beans. We're all set. Nothing to do now except monitor the jiggle, the rattler, whatever you call it, to make sure that it's processing at the lowest possible heat that maintains the pressure. I'll be back to you in about 1.5 hours. Timer going off. Heat off. Timer off. Everything's good to go. Now, safety tip. It's kind of late. I'm kind of tired. It would be so easy to say, oh, just let it sit till the morning. Don't do that. There is a reason for you to take it out at the proper time. There are other things that can grow in your food that you've probably never heard of, and one of them is called flat sour. It is a thermophilic bacteria that will grow at a high temperature. So we want to take this out at the proper time, which is when the pressure goes down to 0, and then 10 minutes. I know it would be easy to leave it in overnight, but it's not a good idea. Okay, our pressure's at 0. We're going to help let that last little bit of pressure off. There's always just a tiny little bit left on an All-American. I'm not sure about your canner. And we set the timer for 10 minutes before we take the lid off. Open away from you. And here we go. First off, one of my jars of water. Nice sterile water. That was a placeholder. Beans. Move the water to the back. Now, unlike tattlers, you don't touch these lids. You leave them alone. Don't touch them for 12 to 24 hours. Whoops, it's already popping. And another jar of water. Okay, just a couple of things to take note of. Notice there's no siphoning. When you look at these tomorrow, that water level may be just a little bit lower because these beans are not done soaking up water. They may look almost full of beans tomorrow. They get a little thicker and they swell up a little bit more over the next 12 hours. But that's all there is to canning beans. If you have more questions, something I didn't touch on, you can either check our video for canning red beans or our video for canning meat or carrots, or you can join us on our Facebook group, Safe Canning by the Book on Debbie's Back Porch, and somebody there will be happy to answer your questions. Please join us there. Thanks.